Welcome to the Future of Ground Transportation podcast, where we discuss the exciting innovations that lie ahead for organizational ground transportation. Each episode, we cover topics tailored to those resolving transportation-related challenges and provide tips, tools, and trends that will inspire you to stay ahead of the curve. And now, here's your host, Daniel Perez.
Welcome to the Future of Ground Transportation. Today we have a special guest, Valerie Lefler with Feonix Mobility. Valerie, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for the invitation, Daniel. It's an honor.
I appreciate it. So, Valerie, let's dig right into it and learn more about yourself and about your nonprofit. Tell us a little bit about how you guys started into the transportation sector and how you started your nonprofit.
Sure. So, long story short, Feonix Mobility Rising is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and our vision and mission is to create mobility solutions for the health and well-being of every person in every community. How I got started in this, so I grew up in a rural area that was, underserved, if you will. We had the highest teen pregnancy rate in the state. We had the highest methamphetamine crime rate. Domestic abuse were things that we talked about at the lunch table in fifth grade. And so growing up in that environment and et cetera, you have a whole new appreciation for economic freedom and economic mobility. Went to the university, started working in transportation research. So I was really more focused on supporting the research from the infrastructure side, bridges, guardrail, intelligent transportation systems, et cetera. But I fell in love with the social impact that transportation had, safer roads save lives, right? But I wasn't interested in studying asphalt pavement or bridge design or geometric design, things like that. I wanted to see how does this work from a human day-to-day perspective, getting to know folks. And that's where I fell in love with public transportation and the transportation world. Ran a tech startup, raised venture capital, did that whole piece of it, but it was really focusing on rural communities. And when we started talking to venture capitalists in that area, they said, this is really probably more social impact government grants than for-profit venture capital. And so transitioned to launching Feonix as a nonprofit organization about 5 years ago and haven't looked back. It's been an amazing journey.
Awesome. Thank you, Valerie, for sharing. So tell us more about Feonix Mobility. What is the problem that you guys actually solve?
Yeah, so we address barriers related to transportation insecurity, and we support everyone from immigrants and refugees, re-entering citizens, seniors, individuals with disabilities, families who are living in poverty, address that transportation barrier and those challenges. How we do that is with partnerships with the local public transit, the local government, the local community stakeholders in addressing food insecurity and housing, because it doesn't matter how great the doctor is if you can't get there. It doesn't matter how wonderful the education is if the children can't get there. And so this connectivity, we look at addressing where the gaps are in a nutshell and making sure that we're setting up systems for change. So we use advanced technology. We actually have technology from 4 different continents involved in the work that we do. So we do a lot of innovative things, like we have mobility wallets, we use mobility as a service, and we partner with over 60 public and private transportation agencies to provide those rides in our ecosystem. And in some communities, we even have drivers ourselves because it's a small community and there isn't capacity for local agencies to take that on. So,
yeah. So Valerie, quick question: who qualifies for the program?
It depends on the community.
Okay. And how do you guys identify those folks? Is it by sectors? As you mentioned, is it underserved communities? Is it based on demographics? Is it minority communities? What is it?
So it depends on the program. So where Feonix is going is setting up these initiatives called transportation assistance hubs. Think of them as the food pantry of transportation. And so with government leaders, with major corporations, we set up these transportation assistance hubs. And from there, we deploy technology, we have team members, mobility navigators, et cetera. And so if somebody is experiencing transportation insecurity, um, come in contact with the transportation assistance hub, we can then set them up with an app and an account and a ride or multiple rides based upon that particular community's focus. So for example, Wapaka, Wisconsin, it's a rural community. We're focused on jobs. We have transportation services. We're partnering with public transportation in that area, and we help get folks to work for $3 each way, whether we're providing the service or the public transit is providing the service. In other communities, we work with older adult service programs with like the AARP Ride at 50 Plus program, where we're helping older adults get access to healthcare and healthy food and immunizations and COVID vaccines and all of those kind of things. So it really depends on the program and the community. Oh, sorry. I hope you can cut that out.
Yep.
Reminders, but Detroit is very different than Dallas, is very different than Grand Rapids, is different than Wapaka, Wisconsin, or Columbia, South Carolina. So each community is all unique and different.
Awesome. And for the payment, the funding comes from the government or from different agencies, as you mentioned?
Yeah, it depends on the community, whether that be a corporate sponsor. So for example, there's a program that we're going to be launching that specifically focuses on women who are pregnant or have children less than a year old and who are living in poverty. And we want to make sure that they can get to health care. And so we have a corporate sponsor that's providing some of that funding to provide that ride. And we work with the healthcare systems to make that connection. And then we work with local businesses in the community to provide those rides. So think of it as almost like a Red Cross of transportation.
That's super cool. Super cool. Got it. And then you mentioned something about having a digital wallet. So pretty much the riders will have access to a digital wallet that enables the passengers to have access to the funding per person?
Correct. And so we look at the digital wallet the same way that almost like food insecurity is addressed, right? You can get an EBT card where if you qualify, you get a funding loaded on a card. You go to the grocery store, you decide what transportation or what food you want to put in your cart. So this enables transportation to be navigated the same way, where if I want to take an Uber or I want to take the bus or I want to take the taxi, I decide what vendor that I use to provide or receive that service and when and where I want to go, versus calling into a third party and then hoping there's a service. We do have a call center, so if folks aren't able to use a cell phone, they can call in and we can use their wallet, but it gives them that option to be in control of their transportation. And it also enables the transportation ecosystem to be completely available versus just one or two vendors.
Got it. And what are the most common challenges you encounter in your role when it comes to transportation?
Yeah, I think some of the biggest challenges are just the policy and the regulations that we work within and how to address and fill those gaps. It varies by community, but it's also just bandwidth and capacity. So, for example, in some communities, we need a substantial number of transportation providers who provide wheelchair accessible service. And it's working with those businesses and those small businesses and those nonprofits to grow their programs to meet the demand that we see, and to help them grow their programs to help provide the types of services like door-to-door support that we need, and then the funding to ensure that their businesses stay healthy. I think that's something that we're very passionate about, that's very unique in that we're always an advocate for our transportation partners to be able to cover their costs and have a good business. We expect that public transit agencies, while they may provide a ride for $1 or $3, there's federal and matching requirements that, there has to be another $87 somewhere else. And so do we contribute towards matching? Do we fundraise together to support their matching? So we come along like an amplifier or a community impact to enable us to address the folks who are falling through the mobility ecosystem. And
Got it. And Valerie, would you say that you guys have more demand than the capacity to overcome or supply that demand?
Mm-hmm.
Would you
Yes.
say that you guys have more demand right now than that you could guys actually handle and operate, or
If it's
what's your
more
current
than we
state?
can handle or operate, I think it really comes down to each community, the challenges are a little different for each partner. So, for example, in Wapaka, Wisconsin, we'll talk about a rural county and a rural community. There's a lot of need, there's a lot of demand, and we're able to cross the county lines. But it's saying, okay, we could probably add another third onto the amount of service that we're providing. Um, but we want to kind of optimize how we create those partnerships, and funding then becomes a need. And how do we work within the government? So, for example, in the state of Wisconsin, only cities can apply for funding. For counties can apply for funding. Nonprofits cannot apply for the public transit dollars directly. And so we have to then work with the cities and counties, get the public and elected officials on board, and then get them to apply on our behalf, even if we come up with the money for the matching funds. And so the
Got
policy
it.
angle of how do you address these rural communities or urban communities where there's significant economic disparities within the regulations that are made and designed by people who were not trying to navigate the challenges of 2023 when they were made. They were navigating the challenges of 1945. And so
Yeah.
the policy regulations to be flexible and nimble to support their communities is definitely one of the next steps. And how, once you've provided those rides and addressed the gaps, you're like, well, this is a systemic issue. This isn't a one-off issue. We need to fix the upper echelons of how this is happening. And it's working with local leaders to understand the dynamics of that, to prioritize the dynamics of that, and to make change happen. So you can put bubble gum over something, or you can rebuild the wall. And so we're now in the beginnings of making those changes.
Awesome. And then when it comes, you mentioned about partnerships with ride sharing companies. How are those partnerships being established, and how do you guys define success on
Yes.
your end?
Yeah, Uber has been a wonderful partner for us. We have loved working with them. We started working with Alto. They're another rideshare partner out of Dallas that focuses on kind of that door-to-door experience, which if I'm a cancer patient or something like that, I may need additional support than maybe an Uber driver would traditionally provide. But we've had incredible opportunities, and they've been a wonderful amplifier to the impact that we're able to provide, because every dollar matters. And when we're getting money that's donated from folks who would give their neighbor their shirt off their back, we want to make sure that that investment goes as far as possible. We also want to make sure that we're creating an ecosystem, and we're complementing different services with different types of transportation needs.
Got it. And moving a little bit into the innovation in the future, obviously this is a podcast when we talk a lot about the future of ground transportation. What innovations would you like to see in the transportation space
Yeah,
that
I
will
would like.
make your job easier, pretty much? Sorry.
Yes. So I think when it comes to autonomous vehicles and things like that, I'm still very skeptical of the drive-by computer, drive-by engineering piece of it. I think there's still a long way to go. But I do think that there is a ton of interesting development that could be explored further in the drive-by-wire space. We had an opportunity to partner with a company called Halo, where they have folks who are remotely driving vehicles. So is there still a driver behind the vehicle that is looking at all of the cameras, and there's redundancy in the internet network, et cetera? Yes, there is still a driver, but you know what? Yes, there is still a driver. And I
Yeah.
feel like it's not as talked about in the ecosystem as driverless vehicles, where there is somebody who is, there is no, it's only driven by the computer or the technology. And I think in our space, having that human in the vehicle, even if it's digitally, is very important. And for it to be driven remotely also is a huge win for anybody who's looking at, deadhead miles, if you will, where, for
Yeah.
example, we talked about in this particular pilot, not having to have that person drive the vehicle and then wait for the patient. When you're remotely driven, they could be driven they could be drive the vehicle to the hospital, and then that driver could then help the next vehicle get the next person to the hospital versus sitting there and waiting. And so for us, that's a unit economic improvement. It allows us to be more efficient with the vehicles. And I think it still allows that human to be present in the vehicle if there is a emergency or there is something that's not right. There's still a human behind that in that decision making and that gauge to determine, do I need to call for support? Do we need to, is this an unsafe environment? How do I navigate that? And so I really think that that's not talked about enough. And they did a demo at CES a couple of years where they went 90 miles an hour around a racetrack, remotely driven. So it's
that's scary good.
Is there, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that from my perspective, that's what I would love to see talked about more, is that drive-by-wire or remotely driven experience.
Got it. And Valerie, one of the points that you mentioned earlier, it was about providing transportation for immigrants that are coming into the country. And what I'm seeing is that we have a massive wave of immigrants immigrating to the country. And as an immigrant, I would like to understand, how is the Feonix sort of contributing and having impact on that community, and how you guys are looking to mitigate and solve those sort of obstacles that we're seeing?
Absolutely. That's a great question. So I think there's two dimensions that we see this is very important from. One is from a transportation to work component, another is a transportation to healthcare. In some cases, also transportation to education. So let's start and talk about healthcare. So in many cases, we have been an incredible complement to, for example, in Columbia, South Carolina, there was a family that just came to the U.S. and they had a 9-year-old daughter who was diagnosed with cancer. And the state was going to take 3 months to get her paperwork filled out so that she could receive treatment and receive the transportation to go along with her treatment. And because we were available to help and provide that through our Access to Care program, that 9-year-old girl didn't have to wait 3 months to start treatment. She was able to start treatment that next week. And so when you're dealing with childhood cancer and making sure children can get access to care, that's huge. We have another program in Texas where we have a major corporate sponsor who is addressing transportation barriers for individuals who are learning they have cancer at stage 3 and stage 4. And there's a 20-something-year-old man who came here from another country, and he was the sole, provider for him and his family, and he found out he had brain cancer. And no transportation, he's unable to drive. The chemotherapy and the radiation are so dramatically impacting him, he had to quit his job. And so his family's in this wraparound program where we're helping, another agency's helping with food, another agency's helping with housing, and we're helping make sure he can get to his treatments. And so we're just, it really, from a healthcare perspective, a lot of times the systems that are in place take months to kind of churn through the paperwork and et cetera. And when you're talking about stage 3 cancer, stage 4 cancer, months can mean the difference between you're here and you're not. And so we're able to be that person or that gap, where address the gap, where where the state has to fill out those paperwork and get through all those things. Absolutely appreciate that. But in the interim, that family shouldn't suffer. And so
totally.
we focus on that. Now let's talk about work. Let's talk about the employment side. So when you come to the U.S., right, obviously getting a driver's license is a complicated program. It's also a very expensive endeavor, fixing the vehicle and the insurance, et cetera. And so in communities where we partner with organizations that support immigrants and refugees, we're able to provide rides that are funded by different agencies. And so that enables individuals to still get to work without driving, without a driver's license. And so we're able to kind of fill that gap and then provide them the opportunity to save up that funding to then purchase their own vehicle and help their neighbors and do the things that they need to do. But again, it's about that gap. It's addressing, how do I support that? Because growing up on a dairy farm, and being was supposed to milk cows directly. I would spend hours with the families and know personally. Okay, now let's talk about education. So growing up on a farm, one of the things as a teenager you learn is you do all the things that need to be done, and the folks that we worked with were our families and very close friends. And at one point in time, there was a family who had a child who came here with them and who did not speak the language. And our school needed to see the parents and the mother to talk about how do we adjust the things that we need just for your son to be successful in the school. Well, dad was in the field with the truck, and the cows have to be milked. And so as a teenager, I went to the family, and mom and I got in the car with the child, and we went to the school together. And she was able to go to that IEP meeting and talk to the school and be able to be that support partner for her child and for the school to address those needs. So Fernando had the resources necessary, but if dad had the truck, she wouldn't have been able to go, so we just all band together. But that's just one small example. There's another example in Wisconsin where there's a refugee family here from Vietnam, and she was working night shift at the manufacturing facility to help support her family, and then going to school during the day. And if she would have had to ride the bus between the two programs, she would have had to walk 2 miles to the bus stop in the dark at night. And Wisconsin gets cold. It gets negative temperatures. So imagine a 26-year-old woman at night walking 2 miles alongside of the highway in negative 10-degree weather. That's a real safety situation for her family. And we were able to fill that gap. And so again, these are the things that are small, but they're so huge in that moment for that family.
Totally. So I always say that the small things make the big things happen, right? So
Absolutely.
Awesome. And then moving us along and switching a little bit of the subjects, what is the best business advice you ever gotten?
Yeah, so this came from one of my mentors when I was running the tech startup, Mac, and he said, plan the work the plan.
Plant the work the plan?
Yes, plan the work the plan. So it was really be thoughtful and be intentional about what you're doing, and then follow through and execute it. A lot of times people kind of just jump in. They don't take the effort to think about what are the contingencies, what are the strengths and weaknesses of this idea. They're like, oh, I have something, let's go do it, But when you're dealing with helping a family get to cancer treatments, or when you're supporting somebody whose jobs, family's ability to buy groceries depends on you, you can't just go into it willy-nilly. You really have to be thoughtful and intentional about what happens when the funding runs out, what happens, how do you set this person up for sustainability? And so, I just always, work the plan, or plan the work the plan.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that, because a lot of times as an entrepreneur, I hear so many folks that I mentor, and so many folks that I come across that have great ideas. They plan it, but most of them don't execute it. Right. So I always say that execution trumps knowledge any day of the week, especially when you take massive action, And then what is your top 3 business books that come to mind, whether it's personal or professional?
Okay. So I'm actually here with me because I'm an avid reader. So Leadership Secrets from the Bible. Faith is a big part of my life, but learning how Noah and Moses and Job and all of the incredible leaders in the Bible and what can be learned. So Leadership Secrets from the Bible. Richard Branson's Screw Business as Usual. I love this. I actually have the audiobook and the hard copy, but turning capitalism into a force for good. And then A Path Appears, Transforming Lives and Creating Opportunity. It's all about social impact and how corporate and nonprofits and government can work together to support communities. So A Path Appears, Screw Business as Usual, and Leadership Secrets from the Bible.
Awesome. Thank you. We'll make sure to put it on the episode notes. So Valerie, with that being said, thank you very much for being part of the Future of Ground Transportation. How can listeners help you within your journey, and what is the best way to reach you? Obviously, we will put your contact information on the episode notes, but what will be the best way to contact you and to support you along your journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So visit our website. So we spell Feonix with an F for freedom and equity. So feonix.org. And when they go to feonix.org, go to the contact us page or donate. We need support to grow the organization, and every dollar matters. A $25 gift is the difference between somebody getting access to their doctor appointment and not. So every dollar matters. And so, join us if there's a government or major corporation that is interested. Also reach out to us through our website, and we'd love to set up a conversation about getting a transportation assistance hub set up in their community.
Awesome. And what is the best website to donate? Is within your website?
Yeah, feonix.org. There's a button that says donate right at the top. Yeah, you got it.
Perfect. And best way to contact you? Is it on LinkedIn or?
Yeah, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or on our website. Just go through that contact us page. We're a very small organization. There's only about 40 of us. So we're pretty close to tight knit.
Okay, perfect. Again, Valerie's been a pleasure having you in the episode tonight. Again, for all the listeners, thank you for staying tuned, and please stay tuned for the next episode. Have a great day.
Thanks for tuning in to the Future of Ground Transportation. We appreciate you coming along for the ride. If you found value in this episode and want to hear more, please make sure to subscribe to the show.